Let's turn to business news now with Patrick O'Mara. Patrick, nice to have you with us on Checkpoint. EBOS Group investors are upbeat after it won a tender to supply one of Australia's largest pharmaceutical retailers.
Indeed, John. As you know, EBOS is an animal and pharmaceutical healthcare distributor, both here and in Australia. But this contract that it's won, it's won the tender, and it hopes to be able to sign this 5-year deal with what is effectively Australia's biggest pharmaceutical retailer, Chemist Warehouse Group. Now, it has over 400 stores, so it's a pretty big deal for them. Now, they're hoping this will kick in from June next year once they get all the details finalised. It will last for 5 years with a possible extension for another 3.
Wow.
But look, investors did love it. Share prices was up 7% on the back of it. But I think probably what's even more instructive is the company that lost the contract in Australia, Sigma Healthcare. Its shares fell 40% in reaction to this news, mainly because we think it was a rather large part of its business, the Chemist Warehouse. I guess the thing that we haven't got yet is a lot of detail. So we don't quite know how profitable this business is as such. We know that it will add something like 1.1 billion to their annual sales, which is something like 15% above what they sell now. But we don't know how that's going to translate into earnings, because the Chemist Warehouse, it's a big discount pharmacy company. It's probably able to screw prices down. So the question is, can EBOS keep its margins up? At the moment, investors are betting that it can.
Speaking of investors, Patrick, I'm fascinated by the thing that you want to discuss with us next, which is pressure by investors to dump what's called sin stocks, tobacco companies, weapons companies and stuff for fund managers. A good and healthy tension here, I think. What's happening?
Yeah, well, it's with Giles earlier on. He talked to Kiwi Wealth, which is owned by Kiwibank, and now their Chief Investment Officer, Simon O'Grady, he's questioning whether, in fact, just dumping these sin stocks, as I say, weapons, tobaccos, alcohol, is necessarily such a good move. He's arguing that when he talks to his investors, obviously they all have their own ethical and responsibility concerns, but you can't please everybody. And his argument may be, and this is what he's making to his investors, is that, look, if you do have concerns, come to us and we'll talk to you about why we're investing in some companies that you might not like. And he's effectively saying to them that actually we think they're a good bet. Look, here's the evidence that they're making changes to improve their situation and to meet the kind of standards that we now expect from our companies. So he's effectively saying, look, let's not necessarily cut and run from these firms. Let's try and see if we can make changes. And I guess one of the things that investors need to be aware of, particularly some amongst these bigger companies, is they tend to do a lot of things. Some good, some may be bad, particularly if they're in weapons. And I guess the question now is that, do fund managers have a responsibility on behalf of their investors to try and get better outcomes? And I guess not just in these type of areas too, because you could argue that if we were looking at things such as diversity or gender wage gaps, would we stop investing in these companies on that basis? And I think you'd probably tend to find that, I guess with all the objections that we've got to a lot of things, that we probably wouldn't find much to invest in. So if the argument is that if we can turn them around and make them do some of these things that we think are worthwhile, and for example, we know with diversity that there's overwhelming evidence to show that more diversity on boards, more diversity in management, these things are good for companies. You tend to have better performing companies and better returns and better share prices, and that's all good for investors too.
We'd love people's feedback on that, and also do people with money in superannuation funds or whatever even know where their money is? We'd love to hear from you. Do text us 2101. Patrick, what did the markets do today?
Well, apart from EBOS up 7.3%, which obviously very good for them, market overall, John, bit of a damp squib. Just down 1 point at 8,942. Dollar tracking just down a tad, it's at 67.7 US, 91.8 Australian, and the British pence. And in case you are thinking of going on holiday before you start with TVNZ, 51.4 pence, John.
Patrick O'Mara doing business tonight. Thank you very much.